Oatmeal. Mr. Meal, you're just so handsome. Okay, this is my tell-all of why we split up Chip and Oatmeal. But this is also the story of how I co-owned a home with the man that I was dating. Well, we were domestic partners. I was also on his health insurance at the ripe age of 22. Why? Because I was dumb as a rock. And I was trying to settle down before I had the chance to really figure out who I am or what I want out of life. And over time, it started to feel like I was just playing a part versus being who I really am and living a life that I'm happy with. Anyways, I'm gonna be telling this story. I have ADHD, so it is not gonna be told linearly. I apologize. Do your best to stay with me. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. If you don't know who Chip and Oatmeal are, I have a playlist somewhere on the screen. You can click, get more context, then come back. So without further ado, let's start at the beginning. The year is 2019. I have just graduated from the University of Nevada, Reno with a degree in journalism. I was working as a junior associate for a consulting group. So I was like, sick. Degree? Check. Job? Check. What's next? Guess I gotta settle down. So here's what I did. I signed up to run this like 24-hour race around Lake Tahoe called the Reno Tahoe Odyssey with 11 men that I had never met before. I called this my bachelorette, and I left with a man. What can I say? I mean, I had to run around Lake Tahoe to make it happen, but I made it happen. So yeah, we dated for about a year and a half. He was living with his parents, I was living with roommates, and at that point we were talking about moving in together. He wanted to buy a house, but he's only really looking out in the boondocks where his parents live because it's cheaper, and I think he wanted to be closer to his mommy and daddy. I didn't want that, so I offered to contribute some money to the purchase so that we could live a little bit closer to town. His family, they're not bad people. They're just like hardcore conspiracy theorists. I also used to do this thing before I really figured out who I am, and that was mirroring the people that I surround myself with. And I did not like the person that I became when I was with my ex's family. I also spent a majority of the pandemic with them, and they did not take it seriously, and that made me not take it seriously. I also found myself making a lot of really mean and insensitive jokes because I knew they would find it funny. So I didn't like the person that I was when I was around his family. So I kind of wanted to get some distance from them. So we found a house, we bought it, and things were good. Me and my ex were very fundamentally different, but I was trying to kind of force to make it work. I was like, yeah, we just aren't into the same things, and our brains don't work the same way at all, but he's nice. And so when we started talking about getting a second dog, I was like, absolutely, I love dogs. So that's when we got Chip. We split him 50-50, and that was great. I mean, Oatmeal was a little bummed at first because at his core, he is very much an only dog, and Chip is very spunky, so it was definitely an adjustment. But then I started teaching Chip how to swim, and they got to go in the pool together, and I started making the pool time content, and things were good. Then one day, I took Chip and Oatmeal on a run, and we stopped at this dog park that has a little lake. Actually, it's not really a lake. It's this giant construction pit that flooded in the late 90s. And so now they call it a lake. They've built houses around it. It's also next to a Scheels, which is a giant recreation store that has a Ferris wheel inside. It's great. Anyways, we're at this giant puddle, and Oatmeal is swimming around, having a great time. Chip, newly learned how to swim, is so excited about it. He wants to go play with Oatmeal in the deep end. He jumps on top of Oatmeal and holds his head underwater. I have to run in, rip Chip off of Oatmeal, and from that moment on, Oatmeal never really felt comfortable swimming when Chip was around. He was always kind of on the lookout to make sure that he wasn't gonna jump on his head. And it made me extra sad that Chip didn't know what he was doing. He was just trying to play. He's a really good dog. He has such a big heart, and there was no way that he meant to do that maliciously. It really traumatized Oatmeal, and that made me so sad. So that moment kind of started the beginning of the end for me, because now not only was this situation not great for me, it really wasn't great for Oatmeal either. But I continued with the pool series. Going into that pool every day in the summer was my escape from this life where I felt like I was just playing a part. I would have such a blast out there with Chip and Oatmeal, and then I would go back inside and be like, now I have to pretend to be somebody I'm not. And then in October of 2022, when it started getting too cold to swim anymore, I really hit rock bottom. More depressed than I'd ever been. Realized, oh, I could wake up in 30 years and nothing in my life could change. And I really realized that I had settled down before I had a chance to really figure out what I wanted out of life. I was 23 years old. There's so many things that I wanted to do, like living alone or solo traveling or living in different places that I just wasn't getting. That's what finally pushed me over the edge and made me realize it was time to leave. So in this conversation, me and my ex agreed that he would keep Chip. I would keep oatmeal. It was a mutual decision. And in the year and a half since we've left, it's only reaffirmed to me that that was the right decision. Immediately we moved back in with my parents. They didn't have a pool. So Oatmeal and I started solo traveling to vacation homes with pools. So he could still swim and I could have experiences that would help me get to know myself a little bit better. I trained him to be my service dog for anxiety. Oatmeal became a therapy dog. I took a 200-hour hot yoga teacher training. We moved to LA. We threw a dog pool party with a bunch of dog influencers. Still don't have a pool, but my goal is by this summer to live somewhere where Oatmeal can swim. So fingers crossed. But it hasn't been easy in the slightest, and I don't want to make it sound like it has. In the past year and a half, I have been certain that I hit rock bottom like 27 separate times. I've made so many mistakes, but I've learned from them and I've grown from them, and I feel more confident and comfortable in my skin than I ever have. I feel like I've kind of been living in a bubble in the past year and a half, just like really focusing on like self-development and self-discovery and making sure that Oatmeal is having the best experiences that he can, the best experiences that we both can together. And I finally feel like I'm at the point where I'm ready to be a person again. Your 20s are so difficult, but they're so important because I feel like if you don't do the work to figure out who you are now, it just gets harder as more time goes on and you make more decisions that feel permanent. Although I will caveat, nothing is permanent. If I'm being totally honest, deep down in my gut, when I was buying a house with this person, when I was getting a domestic partnership, I kind of knew that even though these things are presented as permanent, they're not. So at whatever stage you are in life, if you feel stuck, there's always creative solutions to getting out of things. They may not be easy and things might suck for a while. It's worth it. That's more of an in-depth explanation of what we've been up to. Hopefully this isn't too much of a ramble and hopefully it makes sense. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Oatmeal, can you say goodbye? It's his mid-morning nap. You're catching him at a bad time. Okay, goodbye. Oatmeal, can you not lick your ween on camera? This is not that kind of content.